on the other monitor, so hopefully that's my good side. I don't think I have a good side, but that's the side you guys are going to be seeing. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome, and thank you all so much for joining us. This is being recorded, so I send that out as a warning for those of you who are participating live, that if you speak up, everybody's going to hear it who listens to the recording. But hopefully you will still speak up, because I'm sure that you have questions that are representative of a lot of people in your class. I want to make sure that the sound quality is okay. Can I get a thumbs up for those of you who have their cameras on? Awesome, thank you, I love it. I'm going to introduce the other two people that are here with me. I'm going to try to move my monitor without knocking things over. Oh, I can only get one of you. Let's see. Got it? So this is Ms. Laura Cox and Ms. Kim Black. They are two fabulous fourth-year coordinators, and they're going to be hiding kind of off screen. Be here if you guys have questions. My question to you guys, my statement to you guys is, if you don't mind, especially as we get more and more people joining, just muting yourself, so that way we're not hearing too much background noise. So I wanted to start with the reason that we're having this conversation. The reason that I'm hosting this particular Zoom session is that at our last site liaison visit with our third-year site liaisons, it came up that the third years were really wanting more information earlier on about what is fourth year, this nebulous thing that is fourth year where I have to juggle so much. What is it and what does it mean? So I wanted to show you guys some of the resources. I have, hopefully the screen that you guys can see is a screen of Blackboard. This is the Blackboard Clinical Resources Organization. Hopefully you all know how to get there. If you don't, please let me know, and I'll make sure that I show you. On the Clinical Education Resources in the organization, you should be able to scroll down to a fourth year information tab, which I'm going to click on now. And then in here is the information that I put together for last week's session on residency interviews. So including the recorded presentation that I had, the PowerPoint that I delivered, some worksheets that I've put together for interview preparation, and a few other items. But also what we're going to be focusing on today are the fourth year guides. And at some point, I hope to have this all put together in a nice PDF that's really easy to go through. But for now, at least the information is here and accessible to you guys. So as you look at this information, all the stuff that's available, I'll kind of go through it and then highlight what's important and what I think you guys should look at. The other thing that I wanted to show you guys, and let's see if I can do this. If I click here, can you guys see that? Did your screen just change? Okay, beautiful. So this is your clinical rotations manual, right? This is available on the web. It's on Blackboard. It's kind of everywhere. I can send a link out to you guys so everybody can access it. This is page 85. It is an immense document. But this is page 85 of your clinical education manual, where we're talking about the requirements for each year. So this is what I thought would be a good place for us to start. You see all the requirements for year 3, which hopefully you are familiar with. Year 3 has 48 weeks of requirements. Year 4 has 40 weeks of requirements. So that means you have an additional 8 weeks to play around with. Meaning you could do additional rotations if you wanted to. You could also use that time for more vacations. Fourth year is tough because you're scheduling rotations at different sites that may not be on the same block schedule as we are. And so sometimes, you know, you'll end one rotation and then have a week or two before you start your next rotation or before your next rotation scheduled. So that's part of the reason why there's a little bit of that flexibility built in there. You're also going to be interviewing. So you're going to be probably traveling around the country, or at least traveling up and down a state. And so you're going to need to schedule that time for interviews too. So a little bit more flexibility in there with 40 weeks as opposed to 48 weeks of requirements. I'm going to point out the requirements to you guys. They're on this page, which is page 86 of the Clinical Rotations Manual. You have 2 4-week blocks of medicine subspecialties, and I'll go through what each of these mean. 1 4-week block of surgical subspecialty. You have to do 4 weeks of critical care or ICU, 4 weeks of emergency medicine, and then, you know, the California state law, the requirements for medical schools, is students have to spend 6 weeks doing pediatrics and 6 weeks doing OB-GYN, and that's across their 3rd and 4th year. So you guys will have completed 4 weeks of each of those in your 3rd year, and so the last 2 weeks at least will need to be picked up during your 4th year. And then 4 weeks of primary care, and then you have a bunch of selectives. And we have added in, we used to not have a 3-week selective, we've added that in, trying to create as flexible of a schedule for you as possible. Some hospitals, their audition rotations are only 3 weeks, or they offer 3-week possibilities. In our last version of this clinical education manual from last year and before, students could only get 2 weeks of credit for that. So this, we've added in that flexibility for you. And so you need to do a total of 12 weeks of selectives. And then, like I said, if you wanted to do additional, there's certainly room in the full calendar year to be able to do that. But you also have room to just have that relaxing time. Coming down here, so this is page 87. This is where we outline what counts for each of those requirements. And this is another area where we try to be more flexible, given what students their goal is. Their goal is to match into a good residency program, right? Our goal is to make sure that you meet the minimum requirements of becoming an outstanding osteopathic physician. And then your goal is to match into the best residency you can, which is also one of our goals. And so we try to be flexible. You'll see that a lot of these have a large number of different specialties that would count as these requirements. And if you have an idea like, oh, would interventional radiology count as X, Y, or Z? I'm always happy to engage in those conversations with you and see kind of how you can fit your schedule to meet our requirements, and everybody can be happy in the end. But you'll be able to see all of those things there. I think I'm going to pause there and open up for questions, and then I'll go back to the Blackboard site and go through some of the hopefully useful pieces of information that we have for you guys there. Does anybody have any questions at this point in time? And you can either unmute yourself and just say your question, or you can type in chat. No questions yet. Okay. Oh, I like it. Can the designation be changed later? That is an excellent question. And typically not, especially because you have, and there's always a tiny bit of flexibility, but for the most part, you want to know what rotations you need as you schedule forward, right? So you don't want to end up, and I see that next question too, and I like it. But you don't want to, so say you do, let's see, say you end up doing 2, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example where something could change later. Ideally, your designation would not be changed later because you're registering for a particular course. And if after, and so that course number is going to be on the evaluation that your preceptor fills out for you. You're going to have registered for that course with our registrar. So in order to change the course kind of retroactively, you would have to do an add drop form. You'd have to get your preceptor to fill out a new evaluation form. It would cause potentially more complications. Does that mean that it's never happened before? No, it's happened before, but we try not to. We try to make sure that you know what you're registering for and you know what you need moving forward. Can these requirements count as sub-Is? Absolutely. And that's part of it. So when I was a student here, right, I did pediatrics, and almost my entire 4th year was pediatrics, because I could do pediatric medical subspecialties like pediatric GI, pediatric hem-onc. I could do pediatric ICU, NICU, PICU count for that. Primary care, pediatrics counts for that, right? So yes, absolutely. These will count as your sub-Is, and these will be your audition rotations as well. One of the things that recently came up was that you can't have a single rotation. Each one of these is actually a course. You can't have it count as 2 courses, meaning you can't do your ICU rotation and have it count as your critical care medicine, your 810 course, as well as your medical subspecialty 808A or 808B, right? You actually have to have those distinct courses in there. Yes, but yeah, they will absolutely count as sub-Is. Any other questions on that for right now? Do you guys have anything you want to add to what I've said?
Maybe to to emphasize that a sub-I is going to be the way the hospital interprets it. We don't, as coordinators, interpret sub-Is. We focus primarily on your courses. So you could have a sub-I in 810, right? And that could be a sub-I, but for me, it's just 810. And for you, in regards to your relationship with me, it will be just 810.
That's a great point. Sub-internship. So what is a sub-internship and what is an audition rotation? Those are rotations that you do at residency program sites that you are interested in. So a sub-internship is typically an inpatient rotation where you are acting like an intern. You're holding your own patients, you're on call like an intern, you are part of the resident team. It is a fabulous way to really have a program get to know you and get to know you better. You're going to be hopefully scheduling at least a couple sub-Is, but maybe even more sub-Is. And I'll talk about scheduling in a little bit. And so absolutely, your sub-I, that's what the residency program is going to call it. That's what you're going to call it in your head. When you register for a course, you're going to be registering for one of our course numbers. In contrast to an audition rotation is also done at a residency program where you're interested, but it's not necessarily an inpatient rotation where you're acting like an intern. So for example, I did a sub-I at CHLA, meaning during my 4th year, I did inpatient pediatrics at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, where I was a member of the team. And I did an audition rotation at UCSF Fresno, which was Peds GI. And so that counted as my medical subspecialty, right? And so pediatrics GI, I was working with residents. I wasn't necessarily a member of the team. I wasn't necessarily seen as working at the level of an intern, but I still got to interact with the residents. I still got to meet the program directors, everything like that. So why don't we go into it? I'm going to click back over to the 4th year guides. And one of the things that I just want to talk to you guys about is the timeline for 4th year, right? So starting in January is when they get access to VSAS. Mm-hmm. So starting in January is when you get access to VSAS. VSAS has recently changed its name to VSLO. So it stands for Visiting Student Learning Opportunities. And it is the portal for where you're going to apply to most of your audition rotations. If you look in this 4th year section on Blackboard, you'll see that we have put together a VSAS guide, VSAS or VSLO. So this is a guide put together by our fabulous coordinators, and it kind of goes through everything you need to know about VSAS and VSLO. They also have their own guides and their own information too that I encourage you guys to look at. But including like, where do I look up? How do I even know that this is a residency program that I would want to go to? And how do I apply to it? And what happens if there's a residency program that for whatever reason their rotations aren't on VSAS. So we're happy to answer all of that. But starting in January, that will be open to you. So you can kind of start planning out, what do I want to do? So that means your 4th year, right? Most of you are going to be done with your 3rd year requirements by June. I highly recommend that in the summertime, you take your COMLEX Level 2 CE, and so your written COMLEX Level 2 and your PE, your physical exam, the one that you have to go out to either Conshohocken or Chicago in order to do. Hopefully you would get those done in the early summer. The reason for scheduling them so early on in your 4th year is so that you have the rest of the fall to be able to participate in these audition rotations and sub-internships. So you don't have to be distracted from having to study for board exams and leave and take board exams. And also, if for whatever reason you happen to fail one or both of those exams, you have plenty of time to schedule and retake and pass. So you have a passing score on your application before it's time for residency programs to rank you. So try your best to get those scheduled as early on as possible. For the COMLEX Level 2 PE, they do on a rolling basis, they open up spots. So that means if you have already registered for the COMLEX Level 2 PE and the earliest date you could get was November, I encourage you to keep looking back at that site because chances are spots are going to open up in the summertime as time progresses, as we get closer to it. Okay, so in the summer, hopefully you're taking level 2 written and level 2 PE. You may want to take time off in order to study and prepare for those. So let's say you take about 4 weeks off, meaning your other rotations are starting in July. Early on in July is a good time to meet one of your other requirements that maybe isn't going to be a sub-I for you. So if you're not interested in emergency medicine, that's a great time to do emergency medicine or ICU. The reason I'm saying that is July 1st is when all residency programs start. So that means all interns are going to be brand new in the month of July. Residency programs tend to be a little overwhelmed with orienting those interns and getting them comfortable. And so their focus is going to be on the interns rather than their focus being on the auditioning fourth year medical students. So I recommend July as a great time to hit one of those things that you're not otherwise interested in. If you're not going primary care, do your primary care rotation then. Then August, September, October, November, December, that's 5 months. Those 5 months are going to be your ideal times to do audition rotations and sub-internships. You don't have to do any of them. You don't have to do an audition rotation or a sub-internship, but it's highly recommended. And I'm going to pull up something else that I'll show you that'll kind of help you see the reason that I'm saying that. Audition rotations and sub-internships, I did 5 of them. They're exhausting because not only are you on, right, for like the day, like you're smiling and, being as positively assertive and helpful as you can possibly be, but they're lasting a full month long and you're showing up early and you're leaving late. And so they are exhausting. So typically doing 3 of them, doing 2 back to back, then doing another one, that is plenty. If you wanted to be crazy like I was, then you can do more. Just know that they're exhausting and make sure that you're working in time for you to break. I wouldn't recommend doing an audition rotation or a sub-internship after the month of January because after that time is when residency programs need to submit their rank list. So you should have already interviewed at all your programs by then. This is meaning in the month of February, you should have already interviewed at the programs, and doing an audition rotation at that point is probably not going to help your chances too much. Let's see, where else? Okay, and then so after December, so really in the spring, that's the time to meet all your other requirements that you haven't yet met doing your audition rotations and sub-internships, right? And I showed you that flexibility with our requirements. So hopefully you'll be meeting requirements. You'll be doing those courses as you're auditioning at residency programs. And then whichever ones you have left that you still need to do, you'll schedule in the spring. And hopefully you'll be able to schedule those at kind of lighter hospitals, meaning maybe not academic institutions, places where you can actually take a breath and feel like you've earned your graduation, because you totally have at that point. Questions that I get frequently are during my audition, if I'm doing audition rotations during September, October, and November, when am I interviewing for residency programs? You typically interview for residency programs October, November, and December. So some students will say, I want to do just a research rotation during November so I can schedule all my interviews during that time. And unfortunately, things never work out exactly as you plan. So you may take a whole chunk of time off and plan on putting all of your interviews in at that time, and that is not going to be when the residency programs that you are applying to happen to have openings, right? And so you're going to end up, it is going to happen that you're going to end up having to leave an audition rotation or a sub-I at one program to go and interview at another program. And it is not at all the end of the world. Everybody knows that it's the season. So you definitely want to notify the site that you're going to do a rotation at. You want to notify them as early as possible. I need to leave on this particular day. And you want to ask them, how can I make this time up? Can I take an extra call shift? Can I come in on a weekend? How can I make up this time that I'll have to miss because of this? And some rotation sites, some residency programs won't allow you to leave more than once, right? So they'll let you go away one time, but they won't let you do it more than once. So then you'll have to do a little bit of creative scheduling. Let's see, what else? Let me show you the other thing, and I apologize for looking away. See Hopefully you guys can see that. Where is it? I know I opened it up. Okay, I'm just going to show you guys this here. So I'm going to do a Google search of residency program director survey. So I just type that right into Google. And right on the top is the 2018. That's the newest version. This comes out every 2 years. You guys have probably heard me already talk about this because I talk about it all the time. I think it's one of your most useful tools when it comes to preparing your application and preparing yourself for residency. So in terms of like, what do you need to do? When do you need to do things? This is a fabulous resource. This is a survey that is taken by all of the allopathic program directors, the NRMP program directors. They do it every 2 years, and it's broken up by specialty. So first they summarize everybody's totals, and then they break it up by specialty, and I'll show you some of the information that's in here. So we're gonna start just from the beginning. This is all specialties, right? And this very first figure is the percentage of programs that cite each factor and mean of importance rating when they're choosing applicants to interview. So how do they choose who they want to interview? And if you look, not surprisingly, the level 1 scores are right on the top. So level 1 and step 1, letters of recommendation in the specialty. So ideally now during your 3rd year, you're able to pick up at least 1 letter of recommendation in the specialty that you're interested in. If you can't do that or you haven't done that, don't freak out. Your strongest letters of recommendation in the specialty actually come from your sub-Is and audition rotations. They're written by individuals who are in residency programs, right? So getting that letter from the preceptor that I had when I was at CHLA, that was one of the strongest letters that I had. So you can always add letters of recommendation to your application, even once applications are open. Your dean's letter, this is something you'll work closely with Dr. Hartwig. He's absolutely fabulous. If you haven't established a good relationship with him yet, now is the time to start doing that. So you can see that is one of the very important factors in who they're deciding to interview. Next comes the level 2 or step 2 score, your personal statement, your grades and your required clerkships. So that means your 3rd year clerkships. They're looking at the grades or how you performed on those, any failures, what your class ranking or class quartile is. And then we see perceived commitment to the specialty, personal prior knowledge of the applicant, audition elective or rotation within your department, evidence of professionalism and ethics, leadership qualities, perceived interest in the program. So do you guys see that? I listed off probably about 6 items, all within this top 12. And those 6 items come specifically from doing audition rotations or elective or sub-internships at those residency programs, right? You do an audition rotation there and they get to know you in a whole different way. We say a picture's worth 1,000 words. What is doing a full 4 weeks live in person worth? Like a bajillion words, right? So instead of just comparing you on a paper application to all the other paper applications, they actually know who you are, know how well you work on their team. There was no reason for me to get into CHLA at all based on my paper application. And I feel like the only reason that I got in there is because I did that audition rotation there. I did that sub-internship there and was able to wow them. So you guys will and can do that too. And I think that's really part of the reason why our students match so incredibly well is because they perform so well at their audition rotations and sub-internships. I feel like I have been talking a whole lot. So I'm going to take a breath and pause. I'm going to check in with our 4th year rotation coordinators, see if they have anything to add in while you guys are taking a moment to type in any questions that you may have for us into chat.
Dr. Hendricks, it's Roy.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I see in your screen lack of gaps in medical education. Like what is like a bad gap? Like a...
So any LOA, anytime that you've had to take a leave of absence or you have taken a leave of absence, it isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is a red flag. And so it's something that you need to address in your personal statement. They need to be able to look at your application and see, oh, this person was away from their medical school training for this amount of time, and this is what they were doing during that time. right?
Mhm.
Part of residency program directors, what they're looking at is they want to know that you're going to work well on their teams, you're going to fit in well. They want to know that you're going to be able to pass their specialty boards because those pass rates reflect upon their program. And they want to know that you're going to be able to complete the program, right? They don't want to accept somebody that's at risk of dropping out. And so that's one of the things they're looking at are those gaps in medical education. So for a random example, if you've taken time off to do research, that's fabulous. And that's going to show up in your application. It's no longer going to be a red flag. They're going to red flag the LOA. And then once they see why that LOA was taken, or you have good reasons, or you show what you learned and how you grew from whatever experience you had, then that's no longer going to be a red flag.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Do you guys have anything you want to add into what I've said?
Nothing so far. Right.
I guess it's never too early to start researching what programs you're interested in, what they seem to value, and just trying to figure out your schedule for the fourth year, even though you're still in third year. You might find that fourth year just happens really quickly, and it's best to just try to plan out your rotations well in advance, so you're not left scrambling. I don't know what else.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. That's fabulous advice. And try to plan out everything well in advance, but know that you're going to have to be flexible, because once again, like trying to schedule your interviews during this ideal block of time, you're going to think this would be the perfect setup for me. And then your dream residency program is going to get back to you and say, oh, we can only take you in July. And you're going to think, oh my gosh, Dr. Hendricks said July was not a good time to do a sub internship. And now that's the only time they could do it. So you're going to take it, right? So you have to be a little bit flexible, but certainly knowing what your requirements are and how you would like to line things up and where you would like to go. It's a great thing for you to start doing. Okay, so I'm going to start going through some of the questions in chat. When is the latest we can collect letters of recommendation from audition rotations and include them in our residency applications? So residency applications open right around now. So our students have just recently hit submit and submitted their residency applications. That's through ERAS. Different from VSAS or VSLO. So that's to actually apply to programs. And you can still add in letters of recommendation all the way up until they rank programs, right? So you could continue to add them in all the way through December, January. And that also serves as a really nice way or a nice excuse to reach out to program directors to say, you know, I haven't heard back from your program yet. I'm really interested in it. I just wanted to let you know that I just added another letter of recommendation from a recent rotation I did, right? So then hopefully they would grab your, not that it's all on paper, but they would grab your application and pull it to the top of their stack and review it. The next question that I see is the best resources for determining which programs and institutions are a good fit for us and we should prioritize when scheduling sub-Is and auditions. And that is going to be a really, it's like choosing a medical school, right? So part of it may have to do with location and depend upon who your support system is and where your support system is. Part of that may depend on what fellowship opportunities those institutions offer. Part of it may depend on, you know, if you're interested in global health, it may, you may prioritize, right? So that kind of depends on what your personal interests are and your personal goals. If you have no idea and you're sitting there thinking, I don't even know what I want from a residency program, now is a fabulous time to start looking through some residency programs. So go to their residency program sites and see, do they have special tracks for research? Do they have special tracks for community health? Do they have special, you know, start looking through things and then kind of get an idea of what's important to me. So hopefully that helps. And if you need people to talk to, we've got plenty of fabulous clinical faculty who would be happy to help you kind of decipher down what's the most important. When and where can we see the core requirements for fourth year? So that's something that I already showed you. I'm going to try to click there again. So that's right here. I'm on right now page 87 of the rotation manual, although I also put This fourth year student planning guide looks like this. I don't know if this is going to open up in your screen or not. Do you guys see that? You guys just still see the Blackboard? Yeah, so that's not going to open up in your screen. But click on that fourth year student planning grid, and it has all of the requirements, and then you can put in like the dates when you want to do them and who you've contacted and things like that, so that you can see that. But these are required courses. So you can find that in Blackboard. You can find it in our clinical rotations manual. Sub-I versus audition is which one you do based on the program you want to rotate in, and or when would you choose to do one over the other. So a sub-I is going to be the strongest representation of you. So acting like an intern, that's the one that you really want to do. The reason you end up doing audition rotations is because all the sub-I spots are filled. So the way it typically works through VSAS or VSLO is you don't just apply for a single rotation at a single point in time at a residency program. So I'm going to keep using CHLA as an example. So if I really wanted to do a rotation at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, I would give them 3 different blocks of time when I was available. And I would say I would preferentially like to do a sub-internship. If I can't do that, I'd like to do pediatric emergency medicine. If I can't do that, I'd like to do pediatric ICU. And then you sit and wait, right? And you submit that not just to one program, but to lots of different programs. And then you sit and wait for them to get back to you to say, all right, so we can match you in, we can fit you in at pediatric ICU during this block. And that time period may be a time period when you already have something else scheduled. And then you have to play that game of which one do I want to do most, right? And you can usually send a message back and say, oh, that time period's filled. Is it possible to do something during one of the other times? Or you can write to the other program and say, you know, can I possibly move this to a different date? So there's a lot of juggling involved. But you can absolutely do it, right? And think of all of the years of people ahead of you, myself included, who have all done this. You can totally do this, but there is certainly a lot of juggling and a lot of negotiating, a lot of mental negotiating. You can absolutely contact, so say you schedule something, you secure, say I secured a pediatric ICU rotation at USC. And then I heard from CHLA, which I want to go to much more than I want to go to USC, and therefore the same time period, and I've already confirmed with USC. I could totally, and I did totally, contact USC to say, I'm so sorry, that time period no longer works for me. Can I schedule something at another time, or just cancel it? But it has to be within a good amount of time, right? So you can't do that within 2 weeks notice, or really within 4 weeks notice. So you're letting them know well in advance. So this is, April, and I'm letting them know in November, I'm not going to be able to make that rotation that I confirmed with them. So hopefully that answers some of that. I'm going to a medical conference this weekend. They have a program director meet and greet for 3 hours. How should I approach this as a third year? With enthusiasm. So strongly and with enthusiasm, and let them know that you're really interested in doing an audition rotation or a sub-I at their program. Let them know. So if you can, find out which program directors will be there, so you can look up a little bit about their programs. You can ask them, what the strongest points of their programs are and what the weakest points of their programs are, right? So kind of that question that they'll ask you of what are your strengths and weaknesses? You can ask that of them. But that's really a time to get to know them, to make a little bit of a first impression. They're probably meeting tons of people. So unless there's something unique about you or your application that sticks out to them, it's more for your sake. It's more for you to get to know them than for them to really hold on to that memory of you, unless you've done specific research or you know a lot about their program or something like that. But certainly go to the meet and greet, talk to them, ask them how you can make yourself stand out from the crowd. Those would be really good things to talk to about them. If we're applying to programs with a prelim year elsewhere, should we do auditions or sub-Is for the prelim year? I think I need explanation of that. You mean, so there are some residency programs that would have, or some hospitals that would have like a family medicine residency and or a surgical residency, and then they also have a separate prelim year. And those are actually 2 separate applications. I wouldn't I wouldn't, unless you really want to do a prelim year for some reason or another, I wouldn't necessarily waste one of your auditions or sub-Is at a prelim year. Does that make sense? I would save that for like for the residency programs.
Well, maybe they can like do other things.
Hiroi, did you want to ask? You want to ask a question?
Yeah. So I guess I have two questions. One is, so I'm applying to psychiatry residency programs, and you know, a lot of psychiatry residency programs, you do internal medicine for like 6 months or a year. So like, I don't know if this is true, but I have heard that like for psychiatry or any other program that has like a year of internal medicine to do, it's also better to do, or it's also good to do one like sub-I in internal medicine, even though that's not the field you're going in for, to like show that you can function as an intern. Is that true in your experience, or like, yeah, what is your take on that?
I don't think so. And this is totally just me, right? So this is not me from like an official like psychiatry residency program director. But you know, when we look at and actually, why don't we do this right now? So I'm going to go back to that. You guys can see this, the residency program director survey. I'm actually going to scroll up to see where psych is. And so psych is on page 128. So we're going to drop down to psych. So now we're looking specifically at residency program directors of psychiatric residency programs. Mm-hmm. And let's take a look at what they rank. That's important. Sorry to make you guys scroll through all of this with me. Still in plastics. Okay, psychiatry. So looking at when they would, or what they think is important in terms of selecting somebody for an interview. So once again, we see the perceived commitment to specialty, which that is usually ranks pretty highly. We can see in psych, 84% of people ranked it highly, and they ranked it at a 4.4. So a lot of people ranked it, and they ranked it really highly. So I would say having more rotations in psychiatry specifically would be more important.
Okay.
Than trying to get an additional one. I'm also going to use this as an example to show you guys some of the other information that's in this survey. You can see this is the programs that use USMLE Step 1 and Step 2 scores, if they're looking for a pass only versus a target score. If they accept applicants who fail on their first attempt, right? So never, seldom, often, more than a third is often. And then as we scroll down, we can see the average scores, right? And this means, like, I really want to emphasize this too. We always have students that fall outside of these boxes, meaning their score was far below this box or far above this box, and they still got an interview or got matched there. But I feel like it's helpful information to know, like, what score should I be shooting for, you know, Step 2 or Level 2. This here, they're talking about COMLEX, which I find interesting. And then the average number of positions applications received in interview average percentage, right? So we're looking at the number of applications received. This is on average. It's 1,000 for the number of invitations sent. So that drops down to 119. And then the number of applicants ranked is 80. So this means you have 80 out of 119 once you get an interview. So once you get an interview, you should feel pretty happy and comfortable, right? And the more interviews you get, the higher those chances are. But certainly they're narrowing down the field significantly based on who they choose to interview. And then they also have in here like the time period, right? So when do they offer interviews? So we can see that most programs, 54% are offering interviews in October. This is something I'm using a lot with our fourth years now who are freaking out. Like, I've only gotten 2 interview offers so far. What should I do? And my big answer is, don't freak out yet. Right? It's still way too early. So we have the whole month of October. And then you can see there are still programs that are offering interviews all the way into January. And then when do they do their interviews? So we can see most of them are doing their interviews kind of November, December, even into January time period. Haru, did you have another question?
Yes. For doing like sub-Is and audition intern rotations, like if you, I guess this is kind of a dumb question, but if you really want to stay in California and, you know, if you do like a couple of auditions or sub-Is in the East Coast, does like that work against you or?
It wouldn't work against you. If you really wanted to stay in California, which is what I wanted to do, then you should use those audition rotations and sub-I times, right? There's only those like 5 months when you can really do those. Try to stack those in the state where you want to go. So I did audition rotations and sub-Is all up and down California because that's where I really wanted to stay. There is, you know, there are some specialties that are super competitive. And so the more competitive the specialty is, the more it might serve you well to do an audition rotation or a sub-I somewhere else, not on either of the coasts, which tend to be more popular and more competitive, but maybe somewhere in the middle. And that's a great time for you to get to know a program too, that maybe you wouldn't know otherwise. But yeah, I encourage you to really try to get those audition rotations and sub internships at the programs you are most interested in.
Okay.
Yeah. I see a question in chat, is visa status referring to immigration status? And I think that that has to do with this up here. Is there a visa status on here? Oh yeah, visa status with a little star. So that's for international medical graduates only. So only those people who did medical school outside of our country, they're looking at their visa status to make sure that they can actually continue to stay in the country for the length of time of the residency program. What other questions do you guys have for us? You guys have anything else you want to add?
That was a good round of questions.
Yeah,
super exciting.
It's super exciting.
Yeah. No, I don't have anything.
Nothing? All right, I'm gonna, oh, I like it. Not related to this, but are there any plans to restore the Clinical Distinctions website? Yes, there are plans. We just recently heard news that, so the Clinical Distinctions website, it has been, and I don't want to give you guys too much of, I don't even know, there has been a lot of back and forth about whether we can have outside websites that aren't through tu.edu and yes or no. Anyway, all of that, it's gone through like legal departments and all kinds of places. And the most recent thing that I heard is that the provost has approved the reinstatement of the Clinical Distinctions website. So how quickly we're able to get that back up online, I'm not sure, but it is certainly one of our, it's one of our priorities so that you guys can have that. I see another question in chat. Are sub-Is always a month long? Sub-Is are typically a month long. Like I said, there are some, like Cedars-Sinai, there are a couple hospitals that offer 3-week sub-Is. Do you guys know a couple more?
I know one of 5 weeks.
And one that offers 5-week sub-Is. So we don't have a 5-week course, right? So our courses are 4 weeks. So if you were to do a sub-I that were 5 weeks long, you would count that as a 4-week course, and then you'd miss an additional week.
We do a course, do a 2-week course.
Or do 2 selectives, yes. I like it. Look at,
So
they know what to do. It's fabulous.
You could do,
yeah, so you could break up the 5 weeks into a 3-week selective and a 2-week selective.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you met another student who was on a 2-week sub-I.
Yeah.
There are 2-week sub-Is. I don't recommend that. I mean, if it's all you can get and it gets your foot in the door of the program, do it. But it is so hard to really shine on a 2-week rotation because typically at 2 weeks is when you're finally learning the hospital system. You're learning like where to park your car, where to bring your lunch, where the bathrooms are, what your preceptor wants of you. So I feel like it's the last 2 weeks is when you really shine. But yes, if you can only, if that is all they offer to you is a 2-week sub-I, then snatch it up. But I recommend trying to go for one that's a little bit longer because that gives you more time to really show them how great a member of the team you are. And they're going to remember you better because they're going to get to know you better. I've heard of places offering a day experience instead of a whole rotation. Is this fairly common? So after you interview, you can go back for something that's called a second look. And some programs do offer this type of thing before you even interview at a program. So it's like a day where you get to kind of shadow the residents. You go to their didactic sessions, you have lunch with them, things like that. If you have breaks in your schedule and you want to do that, you can. Is that really going to make you stand out from a crowd? Probably not. I feel like that is much more for your information and your insight than it is for the program to have the opportunity to get to know you. Maybe it shows your interest in the program a little bit, but in a day, you're not going to have really the opportunity to make a meaningful impact on that program director or even the residents that are there. Do 3-week sub-Is count? I know previously Toro has said they only count as a 2-week. So yes, we do now offer 3-week selectives. So if you were to set up a 3-week sub-I, you could count that as one of your 3-week selective courses. Yes. Oh, do they count as 4 weeks? They do not count as 4 weeks, right? So the amount of time that your rotation is for, that's the amount of time you get credit for. If you have a preceptor, right, who is willing to sign off, is willing to say that you did 4 weeks worth of material, but it would still count as 4 calendar weeks. You can only be scheduled for 4 calendar weeks. So you can't overlap. I don't know if I'm making sense with that, but a 3-week experience would count as a 3-week experience. What other questions do you guys have? Do you guys have anything else to say after what I just said?
Yeah, I think that that's probably one of the biggest questions as coordinators that we get is I just did a 5-week rotation, or how can I break those up? That's a really important thing to understand. Yeah, it's 3 weeks is a 3-week, 2 week is a 2-week. If you do a 5-week rotation and you're not willing to break it up to a 3 and a 2, then you did a 5-week rotation to cover a 4-week course.
Yeah, totally. Did you guys all hear that? You guys have turned off your cameras, so I can't see, but hopefully you guys heard that. Our coordinators are saying that's one of their biggest questions they receive is how do I count 5 weeks? And so the best way to count 5 weeks so that you're getting all your money worth is a 3-week selective and a 2-week selective, right? And then your preceptor has to fill out 2 different evaluations, one for 3 weeks and one for 2 weeks. If you only want them to do 4 weeks, or you want it to count as one of those 4-week required rotations, ICU, emergency medicine, medical subspecialty, then that last week, that 5th week, is not going to count towards our requirements, but it will certainly count towards your application for them. The other thing that often comes up is students want to overlap rotations. So while I'm doing this 4-week primary care rotation, I also want to do a 2-week research rotation. And that's not something that we can do. That's not something that our registrar or our accreditation allows. Everything is calendared out so that we know exactly where our students are at any given time. So you can't overlap things or have things count as 2 different requirements. I have a preceptor who is sending in an LOR to ERAS. I know VSAS programs sometimes want LORs too. How can I put that letter into VSAS? That's an excellent question. Do you want to answer that?
Sure.
Super happy. Sorry.
So Laura and I will accept any letter of recommendation, either from you or your preceptor can directly email either of us your letter, and we will happily upload it onto your VSAS. Otherwise, we cannot upload anything to ERAS, only VSAS. That's also a question that we get asked frequently.
Excellent. Thank you. So hopefully you guys heard that and got that. So send them our way, and we can put them into VSAS for you. What's the latest date we can rotate in May 2020 before graduation? So this is another thing that comes up is students feel like they have to have all of their requirements and everything done before graduation. Our graduation ceremony actually happens a little bit earlier, before our most common conferral degree dates. So most students are actually still rotating during May. Do we know the conferral dates for 2020?
No.
I don't know the conferral dates yet for that, but there is probably going to be a conferral date in June and a conferral date in...
I think there's usually 2 conferral dates in June, one in the very beginning and then one towards the end.
Totally. So one conferral date's typically in early June, one conferral date's typically towards the end of June, meaning you need to have all of your everything in, so all of your evaluations, all of your rotations done by that conferral date in order to confer your degree on that date. What residency programs want is for you to be able to start to have conferred your DO degree and be ready to start by July 1st. Some residency programs are starting to kind of push into our 4th year, meaning they want their interns there and ready to do orientation and start participating in activities like halfway through June is the earliest I've seen, so June 15th. So plan on trying to wrap everything up by early June. Does anybody have any other questions? I feel like there was other stuff I wanted to show you guys or talk to you guys about, but I think we hit the biggest information. So this NRMP Program Director Survey, I encourage you guys to look through that. All of the 4th year information that we have for you up on Blackboard, look through that. The affiliation agreement list is something that we recently added, which can be really helpful, especially when you're trying to find a site that you'll be able to rotate at really easily. Oh, that's so sweet. You're welcome. I am so grateful. I was not anticipating, I was not expecting these two fantastic women to be here and stay here with me. But I am so grateful that they did, because they are really the ones who are going to be working with you. And so that you know, the way that our 4th year is set up is we split you guys in half as a class. So half of you will be paired with Ms. Black and half of you will be paired with Ms. Cox, and they will be your primary go-to people throughout your 4th year. And then the rest of us are here. And I love it that you guys are all saying thanks. So then I'm just going to wrap it up now. It's fabulous to see you guys, or at least to see your names pop up on the chat screen. If you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to contact us or reach out to us at all. I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. Now I have to figure out how to close this.
It was great. It was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Irina, for joining from afar. I love it.
Yeah, and yeah, that's so good that Laura and Kim there. It's wonderful.
I know. Unfortunately, you just see my face really close
No,
up.
I see Laura and sometimes Kim. Yeah, those are good questions. Actually, it's good to know it. But we can prepare ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, awesome. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop this and
See you tomorrow.
stop share. And how do I log out? End meeting.